Hi YouTube, this is Darkon633 and today I'm bringing a review of the Marvel Legends Ant-Man wave. Now this wave is a very strange wave since the entire collection is kind of an oddball cast and really only one of them is really prevalent to the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this time. Obviously we do have a Wasp thanks to the Ant-Man movie, but this one's based on the comic book version and not in any other versions of the movie. So as you can see, just getting the pieces to get Ultron is kind of strange this time around, and they could have done things a lot better. The things that Hasbro does to release the figures, especially figures that have long since been cancelled, it's cool that they're actually finding ways to release it, but they're kind of not doing it at the most appropriate of times since waves like this come to existence. And it's just like the most oddball cast out of all of them, I have to admit. But other than that, the figures in the wave are okay. In terms of the actual figures, they're not bad. Just the character selection could have been a lot more prevalent to the character in question. But overall, I still think this is a nice wave, and we're just going to go on from there on. And unfortunately, even though I really love seeing the movies, I'm not really that much of a comic book geek. So unfortunately, I haven't really been reading any of the comics. So the only thing I know about any of the characters here is either from their appearance in cartoons or the movies. But obviously, most of them have not appeared in the movies, but the cartoons, they have been. Anyways, we'll now be going one by one, leading up to Ultron. Here we go. And we'll start with the star of the wave, Ant-Man himself. Now this one's based on the movie-verse version of Ant-Man played by Paul Rudd. And I have to admit, overall, the design of the figure is pretty close to the on-screen counterpart, and it does pretty well for what it needs to do. Now, the only thing I don't like about this figure is that it was kind of a cheap way to release Yellow Jacket in the toy line altogether. As you can see, here is Yellow Jacket. It is a very, very small figure with barely any paint, and the pieces are quite fragile, and it's possible that you might be able to break them if you're not careful. What's cool is that he also has a smaller version of himself here too, and also Anthony from the movie. So it's cool that it actually comes with that, and you can kind of make him sit on Anthony. Let me see if we can get it to work. You can kind of get him to sit there, but it's not too... But you could probably make him sit better in the front, but there isn't a really good way to put it there. And it is a shame since we could have easily got a Yellow Jacket in this wave, but instead we got a bunch of comic characters that have nothing to do with the film. But anyways, we'll now go into the articulation. His head has full movement, can bend up and down, and can kind of pivot a bit left and right. His shoulders are on ball joints, which allow full movement around. Can also swivel up in the upper bicep. Has a double joint on his elbow. And his hands have full range of movement all around, since it's on one of those stem joint kind of deals. He has full waist articulation, which can go 360. It's got a really tight ab crunch. It's really good. He's got full-on legs on ball joints there. Bend double at the knees, which is the typical for Marvel Legends. His feet can pivot left and right, up and down, and if I'm correctly, he does have a little boot cut. Nope, he doesn't have a boot cut. But overall, he's very well articulated, and I really enjoyed the design of the figure. The only thing I don't like about it, you can already see here, is that for some reason my figure has a little hard time standing, just by the way that the sculpt is designed. So that isn't the best thing a part of it. Anyways, we'll now be going to the next figure in this wave. And the next figure I'm going to review is Giant Man. Now this figure is kind of a conundrum, because usually when it comes to Giant Man, and there have been other Giant Man figures in the past, he's usually supposed to be the large design since he is obviously by the name Giant Man and everything. And I understand in some cases he might have been small since unfortunately I'm kind of not knowing about the comics too much, but I'm pretty sure the figure could have been left out completely. They could have easily taken him out for Yellow Jacket. If they wanted to keep the rest of the figures in the line, that's fine, as long as they took out Giant Man, since this particular figure in this wave makes absolutely no sense, because he's Giant Man, not just a normal-sized version of himself. But anyways, his head is on a ball joint, can look up and down, and it's a little loose on mine, so it does have a little bit more room. It can pivot just back and forth a bit, and can kind of pivot left and right just a tap as well. His shoulders are on very tight ball joints, so it makes a lot of cracking sounds. Can also bend in and out. His arms can swivel, bend double elbows, and then can also move all the way around. He has full waist articulation. It's got a very nice ab crunch. Same thing with the legs here, very tight on the ball joints. Can swivel up on the leg there. Can bend double at the knee, pivot up and down, and a little bit to the left and right, but not as well as the Ant-Man figure does. But overall, the figure is okay. It's just the line could have done better without him. Anyways, we'll go on to the next figure in the wave. And now we're moving to Wasp, the only female figure in the wave, and because of that, she definitely has a different mold from the rest. If I remember correctly, she is using the Moonstar mold again, if I recall. I only know is that Hasbro loves to reuse that mold quite a bit, so I'm not surprised if it actually is the Moonstone mold yet again. But anyways, articulation-wise, her head is on a ball joint, can move quite a bit up and down, can also pivot a lot more than the other two. Her arms are ball joints, but the wings do get kind of in the way. Can bend outwards. She doesn't have a swivel up there. No, actually no. She's only got a swivel up on the elbow instead of the upper shoulder. Can bend only one point of articulation. She doesn't have a double elbows. Her hands have full movement. Can bend a bit. Yeah, it's just really tight on mine, so there isn't much movement there. She doesn't have... Oh wait, no, she does. Okay. She has full waist articulation, but it's in the upper part of the abdomen rather than the bottom part of the waist there. She has full movement in the hips there. Can swivel. She has a double joint in the knee, as her feet can pivot left and right really nicely, and up and down just a tad bit. She also has articulation in the wings by means of a double ball joint, because first it goes up and then also bends in and out, and these can also peg out, but as you can see, they're just pegged into the wings, so they do pop out. So there you have it pretty much for the Wasp. I do wish this was the movie version, but I can live with it. Anyways, we'll now be moving to the next figure on the wave as soon as she stops trying to fall. And now we move on to Bulldozer. Now this figure is a bit controversial, since if I remember correctly, this actually was cancelled a couple of times, only to finally be released in this wave. I know a lot of people are expecting to finally have the full release of the Wrecking Crew, and it's a real shame that it took this long for the final Wrecking Crew member to actually get released. And on top of that, some of the other members were actually quite hard to find, because they were a part of the wave that started to be kind of dwindle down in most areas, so this has kind of been a headache to collect. But anyways, he does have a slightly different sculpt due to the fact his body is a lot more bulky compared to the rest of the designs, and the armor pieces do kind of get in the way. So anyways, his head is on a ball joints, can move all around and bend up and down really nicely, and you can pivot a bit too. So he's got a wide range of movement in the head. He has full shoulder articulation, can bend in and out, can swivel on both sides there. It's got a single elbow joint, and his hands can swivel, but no wrist articulation otherwise. He does have a waist joint, but it's actually below the belt piece rather than in the upper part. And he does have a good ab crunch. His legs are fully articulated in the hips, but they're very tight on this figure. Can also swivel. I'm going to do it with this one since it's a lot less tight on that one. He does have a double joint in the knees, and his legs can pivot, go up and down, and he does have a front pivot on the boot. So he does have a boot cut. And if I remember correctly, I think his boots do swivel too. Yeah, but it's just really this piece really than anything else, so it's not really an articulation point. But other than that, it's really nice to actually finally get a hold of the final Wrecking Crew figure. Anyways, we'll now be moving to the final two. And now we move on to the Grim Reaper. Now, because of the sight piece on his arm, he is, once again, yet another completely different figure compared to the rest of the sculpts, and he does have a cape, so making him the only figure with an actual cape piece in the back. But anyways, in this wave anyways. His head does have full range of movement, can look just a little bit up and down. I think it's got a double joint there. Yeah, it does. So he does have one joint there and then another one in the neck there. His shoulders are fully articulated, and as you can see, the cape is trying to pop off since it's just pegged into the back. And then he does have a swivel up on the elbows, and he does actually maintain the double ball joint. Sorry, the double hinged elbows. His hands are fully rotatable and he can bend up and down. He does have a waist joint, which I'm very glad that all the figures in this wave have, and pretty much even the female figure. Does have a good ab crunch, which has a very nice ratcheting sound. His legs have full movement all around. Can swivel. Double joints in the knees. Feet can pivot. Up and down too. And that's about it. He is pretty well articulated, and while he might not be the best characters to put on the wave, he is still pretty cool. Now this piece actually is swivelable, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's actually up on the front rather than from the back there. So he does have a slight different type of articulation, obviously, because of the scythe piece on his arm. Anyways, we'll now be moving to the final figure before we go on to Ultron himself. And we saved the worst for last. Now, Tigershark, I have no idea who this character is. I actually need to look him up because he hasn't appeared in modern day media, cartoons, if I remember correctly, or anything. So, if he has, I'm sorry, I don't remember. But he is kind of a weird figure. He's the most bland out of all the designs. He doesn't have as much details around, and I don't know, I'm just not too pleased that this figure was even in the wave altogether. His head does go left and right. It can go a little bit up and down, but the shark fin piece does get in the way. He does have full movement in the shoulders, but it does get stuck just a bit because of how tight the joint is. It does have swivel up on the upper bicep. It has a double ball joint. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying ball joint. Double hinge joint there. His hands can swivel, and it can also go bend up and down. It does have full waist articulation. Bend at the ab crunch there. He does have full ball jointed legs. Can swivel up there. Double joints in the knees. Can pivot and go up and down. So while he isn't the most impressive figure, he does maintain a good amount of articulation like the rest of the figures in the wave. Anyways, we'll now be moving to Ultron. Anyway, so now we'll be moving to the coup de grace of the entire line. Now, all the other figures may just be kind of iffy since they're not related to Ant-Man and everything, but it's all slightly well worth it when finally getting hold of the James Spader Ultron based on the movie, obviously, Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, this figure is very impressive. I really like the design of this Ultron, and the character in the movie was outright terrifying, actually. It was a very good take, and he wasn't just a typical kind of Ultron where it's like, oh, I'm just a robot ready to take over because he thinks machines should be the superior race. But this Ultron was very charismatic, and I really enjoy the take of this Ultron, making him the most unique Ultron in the recent age, and he stuck up pretty well because of that. He is quite of a large figure, as you can see already there. We're just going to do a quick comparison, which you probably already saw at the beginning of the video anyway, just the next Bulldozer, and they're just about the same height. Ultron's just a tad bit taller than Bulldozer, so it's quite a tall figure. Anyways, articulation-wise, his head is on a ball joint. Well, is on a ball joint, should I say. And can bend back and forth. Can pivot left and right just a tad bit, but not too much. His shoulders are fully ball jointed. Can bend outwards. And his arms are on swivels up here. And a double elbow joint. His hands are fully rotatable and can bend in and out. He has full waist articulation, but it's rather loose on mine, unfortunately. He does have a nice ab crunch. His legs are fully ball jointed slightly, but just the way that his legs are, it is a bit strange, as you can see there. So there isn't a whole lot of movement you can do there. But anyways, can swivel due to the way that the joint is added on, but he can only go about that far, unfortunately. He does have a double knee joint. His feet can pivot just a bit, and forward and back. And that's about it articulation, but he is still a rather impressive figure with the limitations he has, and I really enjoy collecting him, even though I had to get a bunch of figures I might have not really cared for to start with. Anyways, we'll be going to my final thoughts of the entire Ultron Wave as a whole. Now, while this line is definitely not the best by any means, I still think the Ultron is rather impressive, and it is a bit unfortunate that they packed in a bunch of characters that have nothing to do with Ultron altogether. Now, it is a bit pricey to get Ultron, since really the only two major good figures I personally think in this wave in terms of relativity is technically Wasp and Ant-Man and maybe slightly Giant Man. But the only other major figure that I could say is a really big deal is Bulldozer, if those who are collecting the Wrecking Crew up to that point. But Grim Reaper and Tigershark are kind of very questionable choices why they decided to add them into this wave. Besides the fact that I'm pretty sure that Tigershark actually got cancelled at least once and they just found a way to release it now. As for the Grim Reaper, I only remember them announcing the universe when it came out a while back. Just they had no idea they were actually going to make Legends until around the time this thing was going to be released. But anyways, I still think this is a nice wave, and it might be a little better just to track down some of the parts if you're not too crazy about getting the characters to finish Ultron directly. But anyways, hopefully I'll be able to bring more Marvel Legends reviews in the future. Since this is actually my first one, I might be a little bit rusty trying to get these reviews up. But anyways, please comment, subscribe, and check me on Hero Taku for the latest in hero news, since we're with heroes. Also check me out on my Twitter page, Darkon633, as the same as my YouTube channel here. Also check me other channels down below, and including the WRW podcast, which is listed. Anyways, hopefully you'll be able to enjoy this way more than I can with the individual figures, but it's still really good for what it is. And I will be seeing you later, YouTube. Bye.